we money get paper. Cause you know we party hard later. Mr. Flex and Papa got the old city lock with the girls they fish in every area. Stepping NLC with no chaser.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are joining me from. I am Alluminati, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show, as always powered by Alti.com, the one-click crypto wallet for WhatsApp, Telegram, and Discord. And as always, fueled by my friends at Hennessy TT, I'm going to try to finish out this bottle by the end of the conversation. Super excited about this conversation. I think very, very timely for what we see happening in the world, happening in the region, around CBDCs, around global monetary policy and stuff like that. And I have Dr. Jan Schröder. I know I butchered that. I'm not good with German names. He will, again, help me to pronounce it better. But we have Jan on. Jan, how are you, sir?
Everything fine, and just stick to Jan. You do that perfectly fine, and the
All
other
right,
one is Schröder. I'll tell you secretly another time, and we do some practice with maybe a bottle of cognac then.
For sure. Jan, so today we are talking about Carib dollar, right? And for our viewers who may not be familiar with what that is, for those who aren't tied in closely to the crypto space, because there's been a lot of discussion about it in the back end of the crypto space. A lot of the groups are buzzing about Carib dollar. Tell our viewers what Carib dollar is about.
Well, happy to do so. So just imagine you're a merchant in Barbados, try to buy pineapples from Jamaica. How does this work today? You can't just pay with Bajan dollars in Jamaica because nobody can use them there.
Correct.
So what you do is you have to have your bank account, you have to exchange your Bajan dollars into US dollars, and then you have to exchange your US dollars to Jamaican dollars, and then you can pay. So this is tedious, this takes long, and there are a lot of intermediate things happening in between. Yeah. First of all, you need a correspondent bank, you need to have USD, there are always liquidity trenches in the area. Yeah. So this is a problem Carib dollar wants to solve. Just imagine you have Carib dollar, a currency which is accepted in Barbados and Jamaica. So then you could just pay with it. And that's actually what we said, we need this, so we invented it using cryptocurrency and the knowledge about stable coins, and on the other side, the knowledge about CBDCs. Because essentially Carib dollar is something in between CBDC and what we know as stable coins. I even avoid stable coins as a name because people somewhat think this is crypto and then it's volatile and they don't want to use it. And so I'd rather call it Caribbean stakeholders digital money.
Yeah, especially with what we've seen happen recently with so-called stable coin. I know people have a bit of an aversion to it. But you guys, so I had the opportunity to read the white paper, and you guys talk about Carib dollar creating a quasi-monetary system or quasi-monetary policy, and you've kind of described what that might look like from a commercial standpoint. But talk to me a little bit about how its functionality will work in terms of how central banks, how you guys might manage the operations and the stability of that dollar.
Yeah, happy to do so. So first of all, this will not be a completely private stable coin like TIFA or whatever we know, but it will be a digital currency managed by Caribbean stakeholders. So we want to cooperate with central banks, with governments, but as well with public companies, societal actors, so that we really have a good, say, multi-stakeholder governance of institutions who are interested in the economical development of the region. So this is the first thing one has to understand. This is not completely public, so it's not issued by one central bank or the central banks. It's not completely private, but we're using modern forms of multi-stakeholder governance. So this is one thing to know. The second thing, why is it stable? Well, we don't go the way you mentioned just through Luna Terra, just making it algorithmic, we'll have it collateralized with Caribbean assets. So starting, for example, with currencies, then going further down, using things like honey, like limestone. So actually this entity which issues Carib dollar will be a buyer in certain markets of the Caribbean. Right. And this is a macroeconomic player you are then. And that's why we need this stakeholder governance. So that's a general idea. How to make it stable. At the end, you still have to define what's the value of one Carib dollar. So you could start with saying one Carib dollar is equal to one USD or two USD or whatever.
Right.
But I think macroeconomics will tell us, let's have a different inflation than the US dollar. It may be better for the region to have a somewhat higher inflation than the USD, maybe lower. But the most important thing is the region has to define it itself. The moment all currencies are pegged to the USD and you just follow the monetary policy done by the Fed. And this gives the Caribbean altogether a possibility to create its own monetary framework. That's why we call it the quasi-monetary union. The second thing, the quasi, is, it comes from Europe. We have the euro here with all its pains. So this was actually introduced within a huge PR campaign, because people in Spain had to lost their peseta, Germans lost their marks, some are still crying over it. This is not necessary. If you introduce something like Carib dollar, you have it in parallel with the national currencies.
Right. So one of the things you kind of touched on last there is that this does not replace any country's national currency, or that is not the intention here. It's to allow for these currencies to interact with Carib dollar as a means of creating a trading bridge throughout the region. Yes?
Yes, bridge is exactly what it is. It bridges all these gaps, economic gaps between the different countries in the region.
I think it's super important, because even recently, on a visit to Barbados, so I bank with a particular bank in Trinidad and Tobago. They also have operations in Barbados, where I was, and I was not able to just use my debit card to make purchases in Barbados, because on the back end, it's not a transfer between TT dollars to Bajan dollars. What happens is that the bank has to have access to US dollars to be able for me to purchase US dollars with my TT dollars and then buy Bajan dollars. And because, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, some of the other Caribbean islands as well, there is a shortage of access to US dollars. There are heavy limits on what you have access to. So even though I have the money in my bank account, I can't just use it across the Caribbean. And for me, that goes against what we've been talking about and trying to build as far as a Caribbean single market economy for years now. I mean, I think since I was in high school, I've been hearing about CSME and Caribbean single market economy. And I've traveled across the Caribbean and I've not seen the results of such an economy. So I'm excited to see something that potentially, as you said, bridges that gap. Why did you guys choose Barbados and Jamaica to kind of be the first pilots for this initiative?
Well, essentially two reasons. First, CaribCoin is just based in Barbados, so you always like to use your home country then. And then we said, okay, we want to show this really has impact. So we chose one of the bigger countries. We had to choose between Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica. And we said, let's go for Jamaica because we don't have this black market of USD. We don't want to care about all this arbitrage going on there with just building an MVP. But this is just the first step. We're inviting companies at the moment for a workshop on the 17th of June, and then we'll try to design our MVP, then we'll prove this works. We can already do trade between these two countries. companies are invited to join this if they listen here. And then from there on, we'll go across the whole CaribCoin.
Right. And you mentioned MVP, and for those listening, that means minimum viable product, right? So you guys are building out this MVP. And I guess in the initial stages, you all are going to be targeting more commercial operations. But
yes.
But my question is, as this rolls out, how do you guys envision getting it in the hands of the retail channels? You spoke about the huge marketing thrust that was necessary for the rollout of the euro dollar. Do you see Carib dollar needing something similar? How would you see that happening?
I think to some extent it is similar. Yes, you need some kind of marketing efforts so that people really trust this new kind of money, because at the moment they just have my word, a white paper, and a small group of people building something. Some institutions like Caribbean Telecommunication Union are already supporting it. And so that's the way we want to go. We want to build trust by inviting entities of the region participating in it. We'll do marketing for certain. For example, after we've done our proof of concept, we'll show to companies this is definitely an advantage. You have less costs, you have higher speed, you have seamless transaction. And through this reasoning, this thing will spread. So as you said, first we'll go into the business sector. I can think about a scenario saying, okay, at some point, salaries may be voluntarily paid in Carib dollar. Why not? And then use them internationally in the Caribbean. You could spread them amongst the visitors who come to the Caribbean in cruise ships. So it's nice to have all this beautiful different sorts of money, but at the end of the trip, you ask yourself, now what do I do with it? If you just use one, I've been to the Caribbean, I have Carib dollar, I used it on every one of these islands. Correct. So there are lots of paths one can imagine to spread it. Yes, marketing for sure. And this is what I'm actually doing here.
Right. And I mean, you've already highlighted a few different use cases in terms of corporate business trade, instead of company, because a lot of these companies are multinational companies, especially regional companies who have operations in all these different islands. But unfortunately, all of these entities are separately registered organizations, and even within the group, they have issues of trading between these subsidiaries. You've talked about the benefits to tourists coming into the region and being able to start a trip in Jamaica, purchase Carib dollar, and use it all the way down the Caribbean to Trinidad and Tobago, and then not have to worry about being left with all this pretty collectible money after their trip. But one of the areas that I see something like this having tremendous value, and I don't know if you guys have thought about it yet, is that a huge part of the GDP of the regional countries comes from remittances. So have you guys considered how the diaspora in the US, in the UK, in Europe might be able to use Carib dollar to send funds home to their families and such on?
Yes, naturally, we have been thinking about that, but it will definitely not be one of our first steps. First, we really want to have it solidly established in the region, have it stabilized, have people putting trust in there, having companies putting trust in there, because if you really move to remittances, you have a very, very high responsibility towards those who use this currency. So right. The whole thing must be settled, must have been stable for several years. Has to have proven that it's worthwhile to trust in it. So right. Yes, the idea is there, but we'll certainly start by fencing it a little bit into the Caribbean.
So, I mean, just from what you said there, I understand. And I think a lot of people, what they should be taking away from this is that this is not a short-term project. This is something that is intended to be enshrined into the Caribbean economy and operate for years and years and years and years to come until, you know, maybe a more viable option, or until it is adapted or adopted into a different format. Yes?
Yes, so this is definitely a long uphill run. We want to engage with a large number of stakeholders, really make this part of the region. It's not just some kind of a tech product we implement here. When I'm talking about proof of concept includes a proof of governance. It includes a proof of stability, naturally. It includes a proof of companies actually using it. So there are use cases. And so this is only possible in close collaboration with stakeholders. And that's, where this may lead, I have no idea. Maybe CARICOM will say, okay, we just adopt this and make this our currency. Could be one pathway in 10 years from now or whenever. Or maybe it will be a parallel currency just from the beginning and for a long time. We have something like this in Switzerland. I didn't know that before I started this project, by the way. But Swiss companies set up a secondary currency in 1934. It still exists in Switzerland. It's coupled to the Swiss franc. It's no stable coin, naturally, because people didn't know how to build cryptocurrencies in 1934, but probably would have done so. And it has been proven that's good for the GDP of Switzerland, that there is this secondary currency. And I think looking at this model is very interesting. So the future is open. There are very, very different options for us.
Right. So you guys would have looked at a lot of different, monetary policies, a lot of different monetary systems. You would have just alluded to the parallels in the Swiss economy. But earlier you mentioned something about not necessarily wanting to peg Carib dollar directly to the US dollar, because then the region is still at the I don't want to say, I want to use the right word, but still at the behest of the US monetary policy and the decisions that the Fed is making, not for the region, but for the US. And I think that's an important consideration that we need to make as we move forward to build out these types of systems, that at the end of the day, the Caribbean still is able to have control over their own monetary policy and not having that usurped by another territory.
Yeah, actually, this is one thing, one crucial issue of monetary policies, that you adjust the value of your currency to the needs of your economy. Right. And this is an option which Carib dollar will give the region, which is not there. Well, Jamaica does it. It's floating dollar, but Barbados doesn't. Trinidad is something in between somewhere. So we think this is a very specific value this proposal brings to the region.
Right. But one of the challenges I could envision, though, just because this is going to require so many different players to be involved, what mechanism do you guys envision in terms of the governance structure of this dollar? Because it's not public entirely, it's not private entirely, it's a stakeholder partnership type of situation. Mm-hmm. How do you manage the weighting of each stakeholder? How do you manage the governance?
So to give you a little bit background who I am, I've been working in multi-stakeholder governance for 20 years now. So I have been setting up large networks with up to 20,000 stakeholders where you have these questions all the time. So what I've learned there, as soon as you introduce the principle of unanimosity, so everybody has to say yes until something happens.
Right.
This is a sure way of making nothing work. So at least, or make it very hardly work. So what I prefer personally is a consent-based governance, right, which at the end says, if there's a proposal, and there's nobody who has a good reasoning against it. You need to have this good reasoning, which has to be linked to the purpose of the whole thing. Then, you may oppose and start finding something different. Things would work much better if you work that way. I've heard that CaribCoin is thinking about going that way itself, to come away from, this blocking structure you always have if everybody has to say yes. This is one of the problems we have in the European Union at the moment. That's why countries start to circumvent the common places of decision making.
Right. So instead of and I guess, our legal structure is somewhat, the legal structure that we've gotten used to in the West is somewhat like that. You're innocent until proven guilty. So the burden of proof is left on the person who is bringing the accusation, as the case may be. And in this instance, it's yes until somebody can bring a justifiable reason as to why it should not be yes. Yeah, if that's an accurate understanding of what you have just described.
Still, we will need committees where experts are in there. It will not be CaribCoin or a company defining the economical future of the region. This would just be crazy. And so that's why we want to invite stakeholders with a proven interest concerning the future of the region, starting with CTU. We are in talks with the Caribbean Public Sector Organization, talking with central banks as well. And let's see who jumps on to do the MVP. And we'll certainly keep this circle open to others which share the purpose of the whole thing, make a Carib dollar something like a payment means in the whole region, make it the basis for something like a quasi-monetary union.
Right. And for those who are hearing us have this conversation, and we're discussing this quasi-monetary union for the Caribbean, and here you are, German descent, people might be wondering, what is this guy's intention? What is his role? But what people need to understand that this is not just, you coming from Germany. This is something that's been undertaken as a partnership with the Abed Group, which is an established company in the region, based in Barbados, as you would have alluded to previously. So it's very much a Caribbean-driven initiative, correct?
Yeah, definitely. So maybe a little bit of background. I met Gabriel Abed something like 4 years ago in London in a blockchain conference where I was really attracted by his positions concerning governance on blockchain, because this is actually what brought me into the sector. How can blockchain support multilateral, multinational governance? And then, we started having some talks. I joined, the Omega Group in Alti, was invited there. And at some point, I think it was 2.5 years ago, I was sitting in my favorite fish restaurant in Spain. And in this Omega chat group, somebody was saying, hey, let's set up something like carry trade. So the stock market for the whole region. I said, this sounds interesting. Why not join? So I met a lot of interesting people there. Then COVID came around the corner. So the whole group exploded or imploded or whatever. And 9 months later, Gabe addressed me if I'd be interested in establishing something like a stable coin for the Caribbean. I said, okay, I'm always into change, which makes sense. He could explain it very well, because a lot of people have been thinking about this, but nobody had really done it. So this gave me the opportunity to deep dive into the Caribbean and all the studies being done, be it the IMF, be it the UWI or whatever universities on the Caribbean and its economical future. And after 5 months, we had this white paper going, which you can download in www.caribcoin.com. And someone got addicted to this project. So it's not a German coming around with a crazy idea, but it's Caribbeans coming around with a great idea and a crazy German thinking about how could you do that? Because this is what I bring to the table. How do you build big multi-stakeholder networks, and how do you do a change project like this. I've steered projects over 7 or 10 years, and you run into a lot of stuff, which we will probably run into here as well.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds very, very ambitious. It sounds very, very necessary. Do you think that this would have been possible prior to the advent of blockchain, or has blockchain cryptocurrency kind of created now a platform for this to happen more seamlessly?
I think it's definitely a prerequisite to do this in this way, because I wouldn't know how to do a stable currency when I'm not a central bank in the world as we know it before blockchain. I have actually no idea who should be responsible for that central ledger you would need then. And I think all this talks about stable coins and about stability of fiat currencies has really moved this whole financial system and lets it discuss completely different things. Like we have CBDCs now. In the beginning, the central banks said, oh boy, blockchain, this is nothing for us. Now they start experimenting. I think it's 80 central banks over the world who are experimenting with CBDCs. The first ones, as you all know, probably have been established in the Caribbean with Dcash and Sand Dollar. So I think this all sets up the scenery to go even a step further. So what we do with Carib Dollar, we build a hybrid. We build a hybrid between a CBDC, so something public, and a stable coin. We use the technology, blockchain, so probably we'll use Avalanche now for the first prototyping. And this gives us the possibility to have a visible ledger where people can really trust in. It's cryptographically safe, so you can't just make up a central ledger. If you would do that with a central ledger, probably I, as a central system architect, could fiddle around in the central ledger. So you have one point of failure there. With blockchain, you don't have it. And I think this gives a lot of security and faith, and is a basis for faith into such a kind of a semi-public, semi-private currency. So essentially, I think the discussion and the technology both coming together really make this project a possibility now.
Well, you started answering my next question, because I was going to ask what type of platform do you guys intend to build this on? Is it going to be a closed ledger system, a closed blockchain, or is it going to be open? Is it going to have the option for people to use it as an on-ramp to the global cryptocurrency market? And I know we are probably years out from that type of situation, but is that something that you envision? You just kind of alluded to maybe looking at Avalanche as a network. So tell me.
Well, we have to take into account specific things when you really set up, say, a public currency. So we definitely will need some kind of KYC. It will not be possible just for an individual to interact with Carib Dollar anonymously.
Right.
The other thing you have to take care about is no company will want to have other companies to look into their books.
Right.
So at least for every transaction, you must have the possibility to have a new private public key.
Right.
So that you can't really see what's going on in the company's book. So this will be some kind of a hybrid between public and private as well. And this is something we want to find out with the MVP as well. So what way is the best way to go? And we'll listen very carefully to what our customers tell us.
Right. And I mean, so when people hear KYC in general, they get very tense, because people want to be able to be free to transact especially for something like this, which is a pseudo dollar. People want to be able to transact with the relative anonymity of cash, right? But what would you say to persons who say, I don't want to have to KYC to transact across the region. I don't want to have to KYC if I just want to come off of my cruise ship and buy things in the Caribbean?
So you could do it the way Dcash does it. Dcash has a multi-tiered system. So for, I think it's up to 1,000 or 1,500 Beijing dollars. I don't really know the number. You don't need any KYC. Going up from there, you have to go through KYC. Okay. So this is one option which could happen. It's not of interest in the moment because we're dealing with companies, and then 1,500 is a nothing. The other thing is KYC says it's just an entrance door into the system. It doesn't say that each transaction is directly linked and visible for whatever authority.
Right.
So you can build around that. But essentially, if you work together with central banks, you have to have some kind of protective level in there. And I think we don't want Carib dollar to be at the end a method of funding terrorism or whatever. So I think finding the right balance between privacy and security of the system itself, I think that's a hard stuff, and it's something we have to work on. I don't have answers to everything at the moment.
And that's why you guys are inviting partners to come in and have this discussion. And you spoke about you guys having something on June 17th. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes, at the moment we are building our technical product. So we're aiming at medium and large-sized companies doing trade between Barbados and Jamaica. And on the 17th, we have a workshop together with businesses where we really want to learn how does this trade finance work at the moment? What are the tools I actually need? Because personally, I'm not into trade finance. I have to find out together with them. Is it, do they work with credits, or how do they work there? Or do they directly pay, or do they have bilateral credit accounts? This is something we want to find out. It's a 2 hours workshop. You can find it in Meetup, and maybe we find a way to put the QR code on your website. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we would. I mean, at the end of the day, what we are about at Crypto Caribbean is creating awareness for everything that's going on in this regional space as it relates to crypto and blockchain. And, I definitely see tremendous benefit and potential in what the Carib dollar can bring to the regional space. I think a lot of what is possible has not even been contemplated yet, as we've seen happen with the internet. I mean, 20 years ago with the internet, nobody could foresee us being able to have this conversation like we're having now over the internet, that, these are the things that we would have seen on Star Trek and found it to be, something that would be experienced in 2050, started 2092 and all these kind of things. So I'm very excited to see what this ultimately looks like.
Yes, so do I, because there is no secret plan in the drawer saying this will look like this or that, because this is actually learning together in a very responsible way. So we set it up in a way right from the beginning with close interaction. On June 3rd, we have a webinar with the CTU, which was great to discuss this with central bankers, with economists from the region as well. And this is the path that we will continue. We don't have this crystal ball where we know future of the Caribbean in 20 years will look like that. And maybe you, Alluminati, will be the central banker of the whole Caribbean. No idea, maybe.
maybe. But so that being said, give me an idea of, in your mind, what does the launch, or when does the launch of this Carib dollar look likely? Because I could assume that the next 6 months or so will still be a lot of engagement with stakeholders, a lot of tinkering, a lot of figuring out the actual functionality and building on the MVP. So are we looking at 2023? Are we looking at 2024?
Our goal is 2022. So actually have it running, up and running, a quick and dirty MVP, but reliable. Reliable, that's important. Interfaces may not be as smooth as you're used to, but the whole thing will be working, it will be stable, and we want to see the first companies doing trading by the end of this year. So we're not only interacting with stakeholders, we're already setting up our product requirements documents at the moment, and we will start building very soon.
Okay.
So this is the goal, and maybe I can present something for Christmas already.
Very nice, very nice. Now I'm gonna ask a question that I think a lot of your business stakeholders are gonna be asking. When, or maybe this is not something that you guys will answer, but maybe something more that your central banks and the different governments that you partner with will answer. When this is opened up and there is ease of trade between the region, how will it intersect with individual governments being able to access their taxes from the relevant organizations? Have you guys contemplated this in terms of might companies use this as a way to move more value through countries with preferential tax allowances? How have you guys contemplated that at all?
Well, in general, using this means of exchange doesn't prevent you from having to pay taxes. So it's same thing. You would have to use it for bookkeeping. So either you just book it in and say, so value has been this and that at the moment, I received it, and then it's all on your books. And if you have revenues, you'll have to pay your taxes. Shopping around in the ideal tax-friendly surrounding, I think this is something which is already happening.
Right.
Companies do that. I haven't yet done any calculations whether this would be influenced by Carib dollar. I don't see it at the moment, but I'm definitely no expert on that.
Or might it be an opportunity for governments to ensure that they're receiving the appropriate taxes from companies?
This is something I know in the CBDC field. This is discussed. If you have a taxation immediately when something is being bought, especially VAT can be deducted automatically that way. I would be very careful about that.
Right.
At the moment, if I were the one to put up the proposals for the committees where the consent-based things run, I would not propose that because I don't think it is trust enhancing. It gives you a little bit the feeling that using Carib dollar, you have somebody in your pocket taking your money. This somebody is there all the time, naturally, because we need the comments, but it's a different feeling.
Understood. And is there anything else you wanna share with us that we may not have already discussed as it relates to Carib dollar? Is there anything that you want the man on the ground, the company, the CEO sitting in his office to understand about this opportunity today and going forward?
Well, I'd like to stress one thing once more. You already asked it. This is a Caribbean project. This is brought forward by the Abet Group and by a magnificent group of Caribbean people, which I have the pleasure to have in my project team, management team. This is really great. The other thing, this is a joint effort. So really invite everybody to participate. This workshop on the 17th of June is one first opportunity. There will be many more. Please follow us. And whenever you've had the feeling you have some input for this joint project, just let me know, just let the team know. And well, we're happy to respond and take in all your thoughts, just like I enjoyed all your questions here. Some I still have to think through a little bit, I think. But this will be part of this project all the time. It's like building, a quasi-monetary union from scratch, which probably nobody has done till yet.
Well, what I would say, Jan, is that I would be very wary and concerned if you had all the answers today. because that's just not how anything that is that works successfully happens. Everything is about evolution. The world today is not what it would be in 2025, just as the world today in 2022 is not what it was even as far or near back as 2019. In 2019 we had no idea that COVID would have been coming around the corner. So definitely, I think not having the answers is not a bad place to be. It actually is a great place to be, because now you're asking the right questions to get those answers. Yeah, and we've talked about CaribCoin, we've talked about Carib dollar, but I wanna hear a little bit about you. What are your views about the crypto and blockchain space? How have you, personally experienced it? What are your thoughts about it, even, outside of stable coins and CBDCs? Do you have any thoughts? Are you a participant?
I've gone down the rabbit hole 6 or 7 years ago. Don't know exactly when it started. It was, as I said, completely intrigued by the option of governance, of open systems, of international communities. By the way, this is what drives me to support Alti as well a little bit. And I think we're just in the beginning of seeing all the real life use cases. Crypto at the moment is, more or less closed world with more and more people coming in, good guys, bad guys, whoever. But the real life use cases are just starting to grow. I think Carib dollar is one example for a real life use case. And there are lots others coming up. And I think by having the opportunities to use digital means to have secure money flow, to digitize values, and values can be anything. You can digitize rainforest already. Why not digitize Caribbean beaches?
Yeah.
Digitize valuable information. There's so much to be thought of, and we can, I think, really rebuild a lot of things which have not been thought of yet. And this makes the whole sector so exciting for me, because it's I don't know how to say in English, mind-boggling. I think it's just like you said before this conversation, 24/7, 365 days a year, exciting new things start popping up. And this is, I think, the most fastest moving part of the world I know and I've ever been in. I enjoy every minute in it. And not only in the Caribbean restaurants, which I had the pleasure to be last week.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as you mentioned that, we had an opportunity to meet and have, some face-to-face conversations while we were in Barbados. And, you've talked about the fact that you've been pretty much a digital nomad over the last couple of years, moving around and working in this space. And I want to just take a little step back to Carib coin and Carib dollar. I really see a tremendous opportunity for the region to participate in the global cryptocurrency space and receive revenues from the space in crypto, and then be able to have those income be used within the regional community. And I think it's an opportunity that we've not had previously, because previously the brightest minds from the region had to leave the region to go and be able to access the opportunities in the larger world. I think this is a huge opportunity to have these bright minds stay in the Caribbean, work from the Caribbean remotely, and have the income that they generate be used to build the Caribbean. Do you see this as an opportunity as well?
Well, definitely, yes. Looking at two things, the global market for fintech will grow from 100 billion to 700 billions until from 220 to 230. So
Right.
this is an annual growth rate of 20%. So there's a lot to participate in. And I just look at the structures in which I work at the moment. So the core is a Beijing company. I'm German. My collaborators are in India. They are in Canada. They are in South Africa. They are in Barbados as well. So it's from Trinidad, some guys. So this is just an international group based in Barbados. And this is exactly what you described. And there are several of these. And I think the region, what makes the region so interesting, if you start really deep diving into this crypto, into this tech space, is there's so much possible. You don't have all these hurdles like in Germany. If you want to change something, you almost have to ask whether you're allowed to think about changing something. The attitude rather is let's do it. Maybe not everybody is a good doer, but there's the same thing everywhere in the world. I think the attitude is rather let's try it and just find out whether it works. And this is something I like, which I find interesting, and I like this international network as well.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point in terms of the size of the region and the size of the individual participants, because they always say it's easier to turn a pirogue than it is to turn a cruise liner, and even if it's a group of pirogues together, which may be the size of a cruise liner, they can all still turn and pivot and have the flexibility of individual pirogues. So I think that definitely creates a tremendous opportunity for the region to be able to be adaptable to this changing technology, for sure.
Yeah, in addition, if you look at legislation, there's so much going on, making things possible and not prohibiting things. So be it Cayman Islands, be it what happens in the OECS. So everywhere you have new legislations giving freedoms, or you have sandboxes. I was in a conference 3 weeks ago in Germany. I had to explain to the legislator what a sandbox is. So this will take some time until we get there.
All right, Jan. So before you go, I'm going to ask you to just drop one tip, one advice that you would give to somebody coming into the space, maybe somebody who's reading the CaribCoin white paper. So before we go, let's just do that. Jan, so give us your Crypto Caribbean TV tip for somebody coming into the space, looking at the space, whether crypto and blockchain. What would you advise them?
Engage directly with people like Al or whoever, because you can't read all this. You have to live through it.
Yeah. They always say that Bitcoin is better experienced than it is explained.
Yep.
For sure. Thank you very much, Jan. Jan,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing with us about CaribCoin, Carib Dollar. We look forward to continuing to be, a part of the conversation as you guys seek to create this quasi monetary union within the Caribbean region that enables a true Caribbean single market economy. Is there anybody you want to say hi to, shout out before you go?
I would say hi, Liran. Thank you for showing me around in Barbados.
All right. Thank you very much, Jan, for being with us. Guys, as always, thank you for being with me. As I say every single week and every single day in this life in cryptocurrency, adoption is inevitable. We see it coming. I'm excited to take this journey with you guys. Alluminati out. Bless.